So somehow, to try and conclude this evening, to try and draw together all the things that have been discussed about, I guess a couple of years ago now, I used to run this communication group in XLP to try and teach people about public speaking. After you've heard me speak, you're like, what on earth has he got to teach anyone about public speaking? But what I used to do is I used to get these guys together and I used to give them little tasks, and my students, and there was this one particular task I gave them, is I want you to write a talk about poverty. And there's this one particular girl called Becca who is a degree student with us. And I didn't give them too much description of what I wanted them to do. I wanted to try and work out how they were going to research it, how they were going to deliver it. And she'd been working on some estates in southeast London. So what she did is she interviewed a young dad who she'd been working with. His name's Mike. He lived in a 2-bed flat, and after paying the bills, she found out he was living off £8.95 a week. He said this: poverty isn't the fact that I live on £8.95 a week. Poverty is the fact that I feel isolated in my community. Poverty is the fact that I have to walk my 5-year-old and my 7-year-old 4 miles to school because I can't afford to get the bus. And when my son gets there, he gets picked on for having old trainers. Poverty is the fact that my children can't go to birthday parties because we can't buy their friends birthday presents. Poverty is the fact that every day I'm reminded I can't provide for my own family. Poverty is the fact that I feel worthless. You see, we can come to all these things and we can talk about statistics, but every statistic is a life, isn't it? Is a person, is a family, is someone like Mike. And you know, I don't believe that just money is going to solve this. I think love is going to solve this. I think community is going to solve this. I think we have to think justice, not just charity. We have to think relationships, and that's been going through some of our stuff today. I often think about my personal response to it. You know, I wouldn't let my friend live in a cardboard box. I wouldn't let my friend prostitute herself because that's the only way that she could bring money into the house. I just wouldn't let any of my friends go through that. It's about relationships. I've got lots of friends in the Salvation Army, and I remember a lot of them said to me that they used to run breakfasts for the homeless community. And it was a great thing to do, but they said it was interesting that people used to come in and used to hide behind the newspapers, and they never knew anyone's name. And then they'd go off at 11 o'clock to the soup run just down the road. And they said at one point they didn't think there was a hungry homeless person in London because they all knew where to go. But they said after a while we decided we wanted a different strategy. So we started to build a relationship. We started to run cookery courses, photography courses, computer skills. We started taking them on day trips to museums. We started helping them make cards. We realised that these were people with families and histories, that they could contribute so much, that we had to go beyond charity and work out what justice looked like for these people. You know, I haven't got much time to speak, but I tend to shoot from the hip and be really honest. I'm sorry about that. But I do think we need a radical rethink sometimes the way we talk about these things. I think we can't have dependency destroying personal initiative. We cannot evaluate charity by the rewards we receive by doing it. You know, religious mission trips, I call it religious tourism sometimes, in the US can cost between £2.5 billion to £5 billion annually. We can't just go and watch and then disappear again. There are no quick fixes. We need a long-term strategy. And we often say that in XLP, that charity that isn't based on long-term relationship has the potential to do more harm than good. We need a better understanding of what the word dignity actually means. We need policy that serves the common good and finds common ground. We need our political parties not just to say they want to work together, we need them to actually work together for the common good. There's this book that I've read that's really helped me a lot. It's called Toxic Charity. I don't know if you've heard of it. And it says how churches and charities hurt those they try to help and how to reverse it. And in the book, the author talks about the need for mercy and the need for justice. He talks about the fact that he worked with street kids, and he said he showed them love, he talked to them, he took them fishing, he took them on biking trips, and actually their grades did go up. But when they become young men, the need for immediate cash took priority over school attendance and the basketball trips. Mercy compels us to show acts of compassion, but sometimes it will collide with this thing called injustice. What good is a sandwich when a severe addiction has control of a man's life? Or a night shelter when a young girl must sell her body in order to feed her child. You know, I'm a man of faith, and so the world's best-selling book, there's a guy called the ancient prophet, he's called Micah, and he says this: act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. Justice and mercy combined together. Justice is fairness in the way that people are treated and respected, and the way decisions are made. Mercy is about compassion and kindness and forgiveness shown to someone who a person has power over. The book says this: mercy without justice generates interdependency and entitlement, preserving the power of the giver over the recipient. Justice without mercy grows cold and impersonal, more concerned about rights than relationships. The addict needs both food and treatment. The young woman needs both a safe place to sleep and a way out of her entrapping lifestyle. Street kids need both friendships and jobs. There's an old saying, isn't there? Feed a man a fish and he'll eat for a day. Teach a man to fish and he'll eat for a lifetime. It's conventional wisdom. But what happens if the fish have disappeared from the lake due to overfishing or pollution? What do we need? We need a change of strategy. We need to get control of the lake again. We need to stop the pollutants. We need to issue fishing license. We need to put wildlife management in place, policies in place. We need to teach a man to fish is an individual matter. Gaining control of the lake, that is a community issue. We need a community response. A couple of years ago now, I got sent this book called The Weight of Mercy. It was written by this journalist in South Carolina called Deb Richardson Moore. And, they asked me to write a few lines on the back. And so I read it, and I was just amazed by it. I thought it was fantastic. It was about her work with the homeless community. She gave up her job as a journalist, and she basically started this church. But she didn't just want it to be a church where it becomes a social club or a self-help meeting. She wanted it to be a church that reaches in to the community and works with people, like Sam was saying. And I went there to visit. I sort of got myself invited to go and speak. And it was one of the most amazing things that I've ever seen. And the interesting thing was, I guess, for me, I looked at how they were doing stuff. The church they had there on the way was 50% white middle class, 25% working poor, and 25% homeless, all mixed together. This is the most integrated thing I've ever seen. The service was absolutely out of this world. And I remember going around looking at all their projects, and again, for them, there was no them and us, there was just us. And just all the stuff they did. But I remember on the last day, we went to this particular hostel, and there must have been about 200 people there. And we sat down, and I sat down with the manager, and we debated everything that we've talked about tonight, apart from in American context. And we talked about all sorts of crazy things: families, histories, environments, community response, relationships, and all that sort of stuff. And I looked at him and I said, mate, for you, I can tell you're knackered, and you're passionate about this. What's the biggest issue for you? And he just looked at me and said, Patrick, the biggest issue for me is all those homeless guys up there believe that they're a pile of shit because their self-esteem has been so knocked. And you know what my job is? I want to nurture hope. I want them to tell how special they are, that they have the ability to do something. And surely, as we come to the end of our time here, as we walk at that door, we can have conferences, we can talk about all these issues, but what is the thing that's going to inspire us to go away? And I hope that actually poverty isn't just inevitable. We can do something about it. We can make the right decisions. You guys, I'm guessing there's people here for the voluntary sector. If you're here from the voluntary sector, I bet you're passionate, hardworking, and knackered. And, you've got to keep going. You've got to keep believing in what you're doing. Erin, in the health service, we need people that dream a little bit bigger. What could the health service look like when we start to treat people more important than programs? What does it look like? Could we dream a little bit? The biggest leaders of our time have been people that always inspired people to dream bigger, wasn't it? Martin Luther King never stood up and said, I've got a complaint to make. He said, I've got a dream. And everyone rallied around the dream and the vision, and everyone started doing stuff together. He got 250,000 people in Washington without Facebook or Twitter because people recognised that what he said made sense. And then they started to community activists. They started to get control of the lake. They started to do something. After 22 years of being the CEO of XLP, and I'm still going to be working a day and a half a week, so they're not getting rid of me completely. Some of them are probably sad to hear that. But people say to me, What's the secret? As if there's some magic secret. And I thought a lot about that. And I guess I've come to the conclusion the secret is this. There's silence for you, isn't it? It's showing up. Show up. My beautiful friend, Deb Richardson Moore, says this. Where does the love come in? I think it's this. Showing up. Showing up day after day after day. Putting one foot in front of the other and slogging it out. Can I encourage you to keep showing up? Whether you're in the NHS, whether you're in business and you want to make business ethical and doing the right thing, whether you're in politics. You know, some of our politicians, we just slag them off all the time. Do you realise how hard some of these guys actually work? There's no point just slagging people off. Protest is good, alternatives are better. That's what Jim Wallace said. Come up with something, think about, activate, do something. Dream a little bit bigger for your community. I wrote this book ages ago. It's called No Ceiling to Hope. And I guess when you come to an issue like poverty, it can feel overwhelming. And to be honest, I've dealt with so many issues over the last 22 years, and they are completely heartbreaking sometimes. And we need to have compassion, we need to have mercy, we need those things to draw us to tears. But then I started looking at global poverty, and again, that's heartbreaking as well. But then I realised we have made some incredible changes. The stats are incredible. The number of people living in extreme poverty has halved in the last 30 years, from 52%. The world's population now is to 26%. Whilst 40,000 children used to die every day of preventable causes, that figure now stands at 21,000. We've halved it. 22 countries have halved their rates of malaria in 6 years. The number of children dying from measles has dropped by 78% in the last 8 years. So the reason I say that is not to belittle anyone's pain or anything's thing, but sometimes we can feel overwhelmed and we give up. I wanted you to walk out of this conference tonight to go, actually, change is possible. We've just got to do the right things. Keep going, keep believing, keep dreaming. Hope is a refusal to accept the situation as it is. Thank you so much for being here this evening, and we hope you have a safe journey home. Thank you.